Hey there, I'm Jacob. I'm the founder and CEO of Metrosuite. This is the Metrosuite podcast where I talk with experts who are helping solve one of the biggest challenges in housing today, the missing middle. We dig into what's working, what's not, and how we can make housing more attainable, practical, and built for how people actually live today. I'm with Anthony Molinaro, who is someone I've known for a couple years now. He's from Rockstar. Anthony, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. Always have a good time with you making content. So pumped to have a conversation here.
I think we met. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago when we were just getting started. Do you remember our podcast from a couple years back in the studio? I think
I
that's where you're
do.
sitting now.
I do. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm in the Rockstar Real Estate office. We're based out of Oakville, just off the QEW at Trafalgar Road is our kind of headquarters here. And I'm in the podcast studio. But yeah, we had you in and we started talking about Metro Suite and Garden Suites and all the cool stuff that you guys are up to. And I think since then we filmed two or maybe three videos now on
Right.
your products, checking out your showroom and then seeing one actually in person built in Peterborough. So that was pretty cool, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be very honest with you, I think a huge influence for us to starting this podcast is what you guys are doing at Rockstar. I mean, there's so much content that comes out. You guys like you have like content coming out of your ears with like all these podcasts that you do personally. The YouTube videos. You've got the rocks. Is it called Rockstar Day? The annual
Um,
event.
the big event, we do it twice a year. We actually just had it this past weekend, the Your Life, Your
Right,
Terms event. Yeah.
right. Yeah, what's that about?
So it's really morphed into kind of a big highlight of the Rockstar Inner Circle, which is kind of like the investor network and group here. We do it twice a year. They've turned into these big, massive spectacles at this point, where like 1,000 people come out, 1,100 people come out, and this past weekend we had close to 1,000 people again. And really, it's all about getting the Rockstar Inner Circle community out together to meet each other, see old friends, make new friends. We've got amazing speakers all the time. We're always doing an economic update. We look at global macro forces and how they're infecting local investors here in Southern Ontario. We do a local real estate market update where we look at the latest data and trends and housing fundamentals and what's happening on the market and what we're actually seeing on the streets helping investors on a day-to-day basis. And then we
Hmm.
bring in all sorts of interesting guest speakers as well. So we'll have people come in, we'll do a real estate panel. For example, this past weekend we had Greybrook Realty, who's Canada's largest private real estate investors, really. We had Sasha Greybrook, the CEO, on that panel. We had Craig Race, who works in your industry, the missing middle in Toronto, helping build laneway homes and design laneway homes and stuff. He was on the panel. We had one of the Rockstar coaches and agents here, Mike DeZormo, talking about what investors we're doing on the streets are up to. Man, we had a few guest speakers. We had Ben Rabideau, so probably Canada's
Hmm.
leading real estate data analyst. He came and spoke about what he's seeing in the marketplace. And we had Tom and Nick gave a great talk about building a business. The idea of these Your Life, Your Terms events, they're pretty real estate focused, but they've grown beyond just that. And our bigger mission here is helping people live life on their terms. And helping people build an asset base with real estate has been a foundational aspect of that, but it's not all that we like to talk about. That's why we don't like to limit ourselves with our podcast, the Your Life, Your Terms show. We talk about health, fitness, business building, entrepreneurship, Bitcoin, sound money, economics, mindset, all sorts of things, because that's all related to living life on your terms. Real estate, we believe, is just one small part of that. So, like our bread and
Hmm.
butter here as a real estate brokerage, as an investor network and group, is real estate investing to build that foundational asset base. But it's about a whole lot more than that. We like to focus on all these different areas, and the events are a great excuse to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I know that there's a big a Bitcoin love coming from that office, so maybe we can we can jump into that at some point. Um,
Sure.
what I want to start with, Anthony, because you yourself are a very interesting person. I remember when we spoke a couple years back, I came into the office even before the podcast. You were just telling me about how you got started and joined Rockstar. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story?
Sure. So, I'll make it quick. So when I was about 20, I was working full time in a Pepsi warehouse to pay my way through university. And I emailed the Toronto Star asking for free financial advice because I was making decent money at this warehouse and I wanted to figure out, how to buy a condo and start making financial moves once I graduated uni. Some they liked the story. They actually put the story on the front page of the Toronto Star, just in the bottom section, not like the main story. But then a woman read the story where they were kind of telling me to invest in index funds and stuff, and she sent me a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad and said, "Hey, hit me up if you like what you read and you want to learn more." So I read the book. It was a great book. It inspired me, taught me about real estate investing for the first time, and hadn't been something I'd really learned about or considered before that. And I ended up hitting this woman up, and she was a full-time real estate investor living off the cash flow from her properties. And she kind of took me under her wing and started teaching me about real estate investing. Really an amazing woman, Tucker Finn. And so shortly after graduating university, I wanted to learn more about real estate investing and surround myself with other investors beyond just Tucker. And so I stumbled upon the Rockstar Inner Circle, realized that they had like a coaching program here and classes and events and a network and contacts of people you could rely on, and they'd kind of hold your hand through the whole process. So I joined as a Rockstar Inner Circle member for a few months. A job position happened to opening up for marketing, and I applied for it. And while I didn't get that job, they offered me another job as a membership coordinator, helping with coordinate different things as part of the membership. So I was fortunate enough to join the Rockstar Inner Circle team, which was a huge blessing. And it has been a huge blessing in my life. And from there, I started investing in real estate myself. So I started partnering up with friends, and we bought one property, and then we did a rent-own investment, and then we bought another property. These were in St. Catharines, and we did a kind of a long-term single-family home. And then we just kept going. And so since then, I've bought two more student rentals and started investing in real estate. And as I've grown as an investor, I've been able to contribute back to the community here and host podcasts and classes and some event stuff and kind of share what I've learned from all the people here at Rockstar.
It's interesting because you're like, you've drank the Kool-Aid yourself. So when you speak with these people, like you actually know what you're talking about versus just like reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and saying something from what you've read, which is great. So you mentioned a couple things there. You said memberships. So what is the membership element of Rockstar?
Yeah, so the group here or the membership is kind of called the Rockstar Inner Circle. And with that, you get all sorts of different things. You get a coach here at Rockstar. So this is an experienced investor themselves who's built up a portfolio of properties, got their real estate license, quit their job, and now they help other real estate investors accomplish the same things that they have. So you get to work with the coach one-on-one as part of that. And then there's 20 different classes we offer to Rockstar members online and in person in our office in Oakville. Like we'll have a student rental class and how to rent out your home and find tenants and screen them. And a paralegal comes in and teaches you what your landlord rights are in Ontario and how to protect yourself. We have professional mortgage brokers and property managers come in and teach you about financing programs and how to manage your properties. And accountants teach you how to invest using corporations. So these are all the different types of classes that we hold on different strategies, student rentals, multi-units, rent to own. And as a member, you get to access to all these different classes. So you can kind of follow whatever interest you have in real estate and learn about everything if you want, and then pursue what you actually want with your coach. And your coach will actually take you out on the streets, tour through properties with you, and then help you purchase properties and then execute whatever investment strategy you might have chosen for yourself, whether it's simple long-term single family, or maybe you're going to do a student rental, or maybe you're going to convert a home into a duplex and add a second suite in the basement. Maybe you're going to buy a place and add a garden suite in the back and install a Metrosuite home in the back, right? So all of these different strategies appeal to different people at different stages of their lives, and whether, how much time, capital, and effort they want to put into their investing, right?
So that okay. So first of all, I've never heard of a brokerage that sort of has like an education component to it, and I think it's
Yeah.
It's interesting because, if I put myself in the shoes of one of your clients as an investor, and I want to build wealth, I don't really know where to start. Like, I would not just be looking for a realtor to help me, choose a property from MLS. I would need like a lot more than that. Like, okay, what am I looking for? What sort of density programs are available? Can I make any introductions to property management firms, builders, like all this sort of stuff. So this is like a super interesting thing. In that membership, in that part of the business, is there like, do you have like the garden suite people in one group, and then you have like the student rentals in another, and then single family in another, or is it sort of like this mishmash because no, like, people don't specialize, they just sort of search for opportunity?
It's more so what appeals to you and your investing goals. Like what strategy do you want to pursue? And then we have all the people in place to connect you with for whatever it is you want to learn about. So if you want to learn about installing a garden suite in an existing property you have, okay, great. Well, we've got contacts like you at Metrosuite where you can put in a pre-built modular garden suite and get it craned right into the backyard, and it's like the lowest effort option possible. Or we have contractors in different cities that have built up a good reputation working with ourselves on the team or with Rockstar members that we trust, and we can point you to the direction of those contractors, and they can come out and give you a quote for building one, and you can see what that looks like. Um, so it kind of depends what you're looking for, and we'll point you in the right direction with our Rolodex of different contacts really that we've made over the years, whether it's contractors or accountants or mortgage brokers or whoever it is you're looking for. You kind of plug into that Rockstar network and can access those people through the different contacts here. So
So
it isn't like segmented in any different way. It's kind of just like you plug in and you decide where you want to go from here.
it's like I have this goal, which is like this North Star, which is to generate, generational wealth. And what do I need to get there? Okay, I need an accountant. I'll come to you guys, or I need like, you know, whatever that you just mentioned, basically to help me achieve that goal. That's essentially what I understand that you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah, well, so one of the foundational things that we recommend to new members when they join up is we set up a initial one-on-one meeting with your Rockstar coach, and it's at that meeting that we found has been really important for sitting down with somebody and really hammering out what are your long-term goals and what are the short-term objectives that we need to reach in order for you to get there. So some of the most common ones we'll hear from investors are, I want to make enough income to replace my active employment income or my active income, whether they own a business or they're working a job, they want to replace that income. So then we kind of reverse engineer, well, where are you at right now? Where's your portfolio at? What resources do you
Hmm.
have available in terms of expertise, in terms of time that you can allocate to this, in terms of capital that you have, in terms of equity that you can lean on to borrow against to keep growing your portfolio? Like, where are you at? And then based on where you're specifically at, how can we get you closer to your goal? Whether it's replacing your income with more cash flow, whether it's you're happy with your work and you just want to start building wealth in the background for retirement and you're
Hmm.
more focused on long-term equity. So depending on your specific situation and your specific goals and your specific timeline for achieving things, well, then we can tailor different real estate investments to meet you specifically on where you're at. So it's kind of a nuanced discussion, but it's so a lot of people come in with those vague goals like I want generational wealth, or I want to travel more, or I want to replace my
Hmm.
income, or I want to pass money down to my kids, or I want to help my kids get into the housing market with how tough things are right now in Canada for young people to even get in. And so they come in with these different aspirations, and then the coach is there to help them actually break it down into smaller chunks and then go out there and tactically tackle those different objectives.
Wow, it's so interesting. It's almost like instead of going to a bank advisor, or a financial advisor, you'd go to, your coach. And I could
Yeah.
see now, like, I can see that thread of like the alternative investment strategies and how maybe Bitcoin comes in because, you don't want someone to be maybe so like exposed to one asset class where, if things change, they need to have like a little bit of flexibility. So that's, I don't know if that was the reason, or if it's just because Tom and Nick just love Bitcoin.
So we talk about Bitcoin, and we're big fans of Bitcoin here, a lot of us, um, because when you really boil it all down, the real reason we're investing in real estate in the first place is because government currency is a terrible store of value. You can't just get paid in Canadian dollars and hoard Canadian dollars to wealth. Everybody kind of knows, whether it's they consciously know this or not, that you need to invest those dollars in order to get actual growth and to outpace the debasement of the currency. People
Mm.
don't really understand just how much the currency is losing value on a year-to-year basis. It's more than just the CPI number that the government tells you and you see on your TV screen. It's far more than that. And so it's always been a focus, really, when Tom and Nick started the brokerage, is because they recognized this fact. They recognized that real estate was giving them far more wealth and freedom in their lives than their, even though they were high paying corporate jobs, they were both working, they felt like they didn't have any actual freedom. They had to ask permission to take vacation from their bosses, and just to get 2 weeks of vacation per year. They got paid really well, but they were working 12 hours a day in a crappy corporate cubicle office, and
Mm.
they realized their real estate investments they were doing on the side were giving them far more wealth and freedom. And so they quit their jobs to start Rockstar to help other people start doing that. But along the way, as they started learning more about the money system and why we need to invest in the first place, it led them to understanding sound money and the fact that our
What's that?
government.
Is that what's sound money? Sound
So,
money.
so sound money is hard money. It's money that can't be inflated at will.
Mm.
Um, so gold, for example, was money for most of human history. It's really just in the past 100 years that government currency has detached from reality, from a hard stop, which disciplined governments in how much currency they could create. Because when you were backed by gold, you could only kind of create so much currency as you had in gold reserves.
Mm.
And so once you take gold out of the equation and you don't have anything backing your currency, you can kind of create currency ad infinitum, and you can create infinite currency. And when you overdo it, that's when you see like really bad hyperinflationary events. But we have inflation every year, year after year after year. There's inflation, and your dollars are losing value. And
Mm.
so we're into Bitcoin and gold, and we talk about sound money here because we realize, like, it's not that real estate is going up, it's that the dollar is going down. And real estate is one way to protect your purchasing power by owning scarce, desirable assets that are going to continue to have desirability to people to want to own into the future. And because you need to get out of dollars, really, you get paid and you can't hold on to these dollars. You got to buy hard assets. You got to buy stuff
Mm.
that's hard to produce, that are scarce. And so what is that? Well, that's Southern Ontario real estate, right? We have a housing supply issue here where there's a fundamental lack of supply versus the demand. And I know that prices have come down in the short term, kind of after the COVID boom, but the long-term trend is prices are going up, and much more than the average Canadian income. And it's because they're in a scarce supply. And so you want to own things that are scarce and desirable and hard to produce, like real estate, like homes. Like, you create these modular homes, like, it's not easy to create homes, right?
Mm.
It's not like you can just print them out of thin air like you print the money.
Mm.
So, and Bitcoin is a scarcity. It's scarce money. There's only 21 million coins. That's all there's ever going to be. And gold has been a scarcity, a very scarce commodity, the scarcest of all commodities for over 5,000 years. And so humans have gravitated towards gold because of its monetary properties, because of how scarce it is, because of how durable it is, and it's how divisible it is, and it's got certain properties that made it good money for a long time. And Bitcoin has many of those same properties, but actually a lot better than gold itself. And so it's kind of like a digital gold, is how you could think of it. And so we talk about that because not only do you want to protect yourselves and kind of benefit from asset inflation by owning real estate and creating income streams for yourself, but you want to protect those income streams and your wealth over the long term from currency debasement. And gold, sound money, Bitcoin have historically been really good places to store your value over the long term to protect it from that currency debasement. So that's why we talk about all three of those different things.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's very interesting. A lot of good information there. And I think on the real estate bucket, it's kind of interesting because you kind of benefit dually from an inflation perspective because you naturally get like rent will be rent from, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe will is one of the key things that will rise with inflation. And so you get the benefit there because the inflation is accruing to you, at least nominally. And then also the inflation devalues the debt that you hold on the real estate, right? So you get like a double benefit almost.
Yeah, totally. So the asset itself kind of holds on to its value because it has relative scarcity here in Southern Ontario, at least. Rents tend to inflate upward over time. Now, your expenses tend to inflate upward over time as well. So
That's
that's
true.
something you have to consider. However, the loan you take, you're right. Like if you take a loan for $500,000 to buy a property today, over the next 10, 20 years, you're paying back that same fixed principal amount of $500,000 with dollars that are actually worth less in real terms year after year after year. And the government works the same way. Like the government has all these deficits. And the reason that they're okay with inflation and need inflation really is so that they can pay their debts back with weaker dollars year after year after
Mm,
year. And so, really, in this inflationary environment that's backed by nothing but confidence that we're in
mm,
2025, you need to own things that the government can't print, that the central banks can't print, that the bankers can't create out of thin air. And that's real estate, that's Bitcoin, that's gold. There's other commodities, but they all inflate in their own way because if you put all your money in copper, they just mine more copper. And it's like the copper
right,
supply is inflating, right? So there's certain
right.
So gold historically has been very difficult to inflate beyond about 2% of the existing stockpile per year.
Mm,
Bitcoin is impossible to inflate. It's the one fixed scarcity. And homes, we have all this artificial scarcity like the Ontario Greenbelt, which we're not allowed to develop on for environmental reasons. And so
right.
that's like a political scarcity where they say, no, you can't build there, right? And we have zoning that makes it difficult to build more homes. And we have NIMBYism and bylaws that make it more difficult to buy more homes. So it's these
Hmm.
kind of human scarcities because it's really us making these laws that we can't do these things. We can't build more homes, but that also introduces a scarcity that you can take advantage of to protect your dollars from debasement.
It's also, I would say though that it's interesting because it is very location specific. Like we have family that just came from Dallas, in Texas, and down there, like I mean, at least in Houston, they have not really none of this that you mentioned, like no environmental protection ring, like very little zoning requirements, very quick permits, and like it they have a lot of housing there. So it feels very location dependent.
Yeah, and it totally is. Yeah. So I've mentioned a couple times like specifically because I wanted to say in Southern Ontario because it's not like this elsewhere, right? You see a lot
Hmm.
less of these kind of artificial scarcities preventing building. You don't see as much of that elsewhere. And obviously we've had huge population growth. So even though we are building more housing supply in Southern Ontario, despite all these kind of constraints and development costs, just the tap has been turned on, you know, so wide with new population growth, specifically largely driven through immigration, that it's like, you bail out the bucket, but the bucket fills right back up again with new
Hmm.
people, new demand for housing. So it kind of creates that scarcity, but it's totally location dependent.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so moving on to the next topic, I wanted to ask you where are where are coaches advising your members to generate wealth? Like where is the biggest opportunity? And I don't mean that like maybe necessarily like city specific, but also type of investing in real estate.
Mhm.
So like garden suites or student rentals or like what's like the biggest driver right now for from your viewpoint?
I'd say just in sheer popularity, it's probably been in the past few months here, student rentals in established kind of legacy school university towns. So Western University, for example, in London. We've done a lot of business in McMaster University. So I'd say student rentals have been most popular, but again, it's so dependent on the specific investor and their goals and where they live, and are they willing to drive, how far are they willing to drive to manage their property, and are they going to self-manage or hire a manager? How much capital and time are they working with? So it's again, it's very specific to that investor. Um, but student rentals, I'd say, have been pretty popular. And like, if I were in the market to buy something right now, I would probably buy a student rental because it's much easier to get higher cash flow. Um, we're seeing really strong rents, and then with students, they're kind of, they move in for like 2-3 year programs. Like, typically universities are 4 year programs, so you'll get a group of friends who might move in their second year. They spend first year in residence, they move in second year, and they stay second year, third year, fourth year, and they move on. And then you're able to reset rents at the new market prices, which are typically higher than they were 3 years ago because rents kind of inflate upward over time. And so you're able to keep up with market rents. Whereas with like a long-term single family home, you might get a tenant that stays there 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and rents have inflated actually far beyond what you've been increasing it each month, given Ontario's rent control increases of like 2.5%. And so sometimes your rents can actually fall behind market rent. So that's a nice advantage with student rentals. And also, you're just not really likely to ever end up at the landlord tenant board with student rentals. These aren't professional tenants. These aren't tenants abusing the system. These are like kids that need a place to live while they go to school, and it's backstopped by their parents. So it's essentially them on the lease, but their parents are responsible for paying the rent a lot of the time.
Right. Okay. And I've been asked, and I guess this is my question for you. Like, I know that the federal government had made some certain changes to the international student visa program. Has that impacted or not impacted the student rental focus and its opportunity?
Not at the big legacy schools that we focus on. So we're looking at like Western University, Guelph University, Laurier, Brock University, Queens, kind of these established schools that have been around for decades and decades, and they have a large domestic student base. And so they're not as reliant on international students. We'll have some student demand dropped if they, cut down on all these international students, probably, but just it's not as significant as it is with these kind of fly by night colleges that were
Right.
the ones attracting all of these international students. So like Conestoga College, for example, and these smaller college campuses that were basically offering anyone and their cousin like a diploma to come here, and you come here for 1 year, get a diploma, and really it's just a hack to get into the Canadian immigration system. And so that's what they're cracking down on. And at these big legacy schools that have had demand for decades and decades, it's just not having an impact.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's almost like a flight to quality, right? Like you going around these schools, you just have a lot more comfort than like, a secondary school, or even maybe like, what's that one like in near Sudbury? I don't know if you know which one there's a couple that like, if you, do you know what I'm talking about, or?
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay. But if you go, I feel like if you go like maybe Sault Ste. Marie or Sudbury, then you have like higher risk. But if you're in the schools that you mentioned, then you're more safe, which is really interesting.
Totally. And it depends on the area around the school too. Like, you got to be in the right area. And so you got to work with if you're going to buy a student rental, you got to work with somebody who really knows the student rental market and make sure you end up buying in the right area, because that can affect whether or not you're going to be able to get consistent demand from students to rent the home.
Yeah, for sure. And are you guys also, I guess, what's your opinion on the sort of the four and sixplexes and garden suites that have just been passed, like in Toronto and I think in Hamilton, a couple other places? Are you also focusing on that, or you're staying away for now?
We have some investors who definitely are. They're buying a triplex in Hamilton and they're adding a fourth unit and then a potential fifth unit down the road when bylaws allow for it, with like a detached garage, or they have the lot space to put it in, and they're kind of future proofing their properties. I just shot a YouTube video last week or 2 weeks ago at a property in Brantford where the investor originally bought a duplex, but on a big corner lot, and they just built a garden suite in the back. And so what they also did though is they left the uh, basement of the garden suite unfinished, so that when bylaws hopefully catch up to allow for more densification, like we're seeing all across Ontario, kind of really starting from Toronto. So when the bylaws in Brantford allow it, they have the option, and all the plumbing is roughed in, like they're ready to go to add a fourth suite in the basement of that garden suite. And so we're seeing, yeah, we are seeing that, and it's interesting. I know you had Victoria on this podcast, Victoria Suen. So
From Buildex.
she's been a long time Rockstar member. She teaches one of the classes at Rockstar on forcing appreciation and these multiple different strategies you can implement to force appreciation and value on your properties. We've shot videos with her, and she's shown us the work she's doing with Toronto investors, building fourplexes or converting to fourplexes, fiveplexes, sixplexes now, I believe she's working on. So yeah, we've seen that, and while it's not as popular with our investor base, it's definitely becoming more popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that comment about the unfinished basement, that's really interesting because I think like if you look at the math, like you're building this foundation anyways, if you sort of a basement foundation anyways. So if you just include that in like the price of the total build, let's say it's a new build, and you leave it unfinished, then when you need to, when, if and when the bylaws catch up, like you said, you're only paying for like the renovation costs, I don't know, 150, 100,000 to build out these additional units with everything already there. And then like if you just look at the return on that 150 or 125K spend, that's like a very nice return. So that's really interesting. I haven't heard a lot of people doing that, but I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, it's so yeah, a couple of Rockstar members I know of have done that now, and it's just about future proofing their portfolios. And even when we help investors right now purchase a single family home or invest in a duplex, we are looking at, okay, what else can be done with this property down the line? Can you add that suite in the basement if there isn't one already? Or if it's already a 2-unit property, is it on a big enough lot and with the right parameters to allow for a garden suite to be built in the future, whether you drop it in Metrosuite style or it's constructed, right? Does it allow for that future growth? Can we put an unfinished basement in that garden suite to allow for a potential fourth unit down the line? So it's all stuff that we try to help our investors think about so that you set yourself up for the long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In part, one of the reasons why I asked you about the multiplex is because internally right now we're actually doing a pilot project for a modular multiplex. So we have a client who bought a single family home and we're knocking it down for them. We're building a basement, unfinished basement, like this gentleman in Brantford, and then a modular fourplex, so 3 stories, 4 units and 3 stories, and then one of our modular garden suites. And our hope is to sort of prove out this model and offer it to other investors in the future. And so I'm just curious to see if like a repeatable playbook could be created for an investor where, they have the realtor or the brokerage that gives them like all sorts of opportunities to buy a lot. Then they have their finance person, maybe it's through Rockstar, to help them arrange construction financing. Then they have a builder to help them build the multiplex and the garden suite. Then they have like a property maintenance person once it's done. And I feel like if that's created, then like that's a very repeatable playbook. And that could be super interesting. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's too early or not.
I think it's fascinating what you guys are doing over there with the modular stuff, and probably, somewhat the future of home building and creating more housing is going to be creating these kind of plug and play modular homes you can just drop in, and it just makes sense. It's more efficient. It's a lot faster to get new housing to market, and I'm sure with just human innovation, the materials are going to get better and better to do the stuff as well.
Yeah. I think like if I were to put myself in the shoes of the investor looking at like building something new to densify, building it faster, just like like really helps the model, right? Like if you compress like the time from like purchase to occupancy, you're just spending less on interest, less on a whole bunch of stuff, and you can cycle your capital faster and a whole bunch of different like good benefits. So I think from an investor's perspective, I hope that modular does take off and it'll just create a lot more housing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. So one last question I wanted to ask you is, what is your take on the market right now, and where do you think that the market is heading?
Yeah, so I'd say it's segmented. Like obviously Toronto condos are taking a huge hit right now, and it's kind of bringing down like the average price point in Ontario and stuff. But Ontario as a whole has, the bubble popped in 2022 with the higher rates. Affordability just got out of control. And to be honest, homes were going up in price at an unsustainable level. The bubble had to pop to a certain degree. Did they have to raise rates that much? I don't know. I don't know that they did. But thankfully, they're headed in the right direction now. It's helping with affordability for people. But that was a big shock, and I think a lot of people have felt the pain over the last few years just from higher payments across the board, from consumer inflation to the inflation in their housing costs and stuff. So I think that's all taken a toll. And then of course Trump came in with his tariffs and a whole bunch of economic uncertainty and really shook things up. And now you see you see plants shutting down and companies moving to the US, and the Liberals got voted in again, and so that was a big uncertainty as well. What was going to happen with the Canadian election, and are we still going to see the massive government deficit spending, and that's going to continue with the Liberals? And so I think there's been a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of kind of dumb decisions being made in terms of government fiscal responsibility, and so I think that's all having its effect right now on the housing market, and it's been a massive bull run in Ontario real estate. Now other provinces aren't hurting as bad, and they're actually getting price appreciation in certain provinces, right?
Hmm.
Like the eastern provinces are doing much better and stuff. So I don't really follow that stuff as much, just focused on Ontario. But condos have taken a hit. It was massively driven through speculation, and people are buying all these tiny shoe boxes in the sky, many without a plan to actually close on the property, and they're planning to just flip it. And the music stopped when rates went up, and so there's a lot of pain to kind of unwind in that market still. However, what we're now seeing is new supply being built is really dropping. So as rates went up, the ability to
Like insanely dropping. It's like DOA.
exactly, it's like dead, and so now it looks like we're setting up for a supply crunch in like the next 5 to 10 years because all of these housing starts plummeted, and we already had a housing supply issue here for a long time. We had just too many people and not enough homes being built for them, and especially not enough of the right homes, which is like ground related housing, single family homes, townhomes, detached homes just aren't being built. We're seeing a ton of purpose built rental apartments being built, and all of the condos that were being built have kind of now flipped into they're building purpose built rentals instead, but we're not building single family homes. And so I just think there's going to be a big supply shock in that area. I think even Toronto condos will get a big supply shock because all of those projects were canceled. And in 5 to 10 years, we're still going to need new condos as that market kind of rebalances itself out. And so are we in the bottom of the market? I don't know. It feels like that. It feels like we're in the bottom and we're going to keep grinding sideways maybe for a year or two and then start climbing our way probably back out, at least in nominal prices. But yeah, it's kind of messy, and I just feel like investor psychology has taken a big hit in the past few years because many investors were just over their skis in terms of being over leveraged when rates shot
Hmm.
up, and nobody anticipated how aggressively they would raise rates, especially after like a decade plus of keeping them lower than they needed to be really, and after all their promises of not raising rates. So I think psychology's taken a big hit, but we're going to need investors to come back in and keep building homes, keep adding units, keep adding garden suites, because there is a big supply issue in this province, and it's only going to get worse because all of these housing starts have plummeted. And so I think rates will have to come down. Hopefully some of the economic uncertainty gets figured out with the trade war, and we can get back on our own 2 feet, start diversifying Canada's economy a little bit. Um, so hopefully, like, the worst is behind us, and
Yeah.
but I still think we're in for like 2 more years of kind of like sideways action overall.
But do you think that there's been like a structural recalibration from like price appreciation in the speculative sense to like just a focus on cash flow? And I say this because there's like this huge opportunity of forced appreciation or creating cash flow in the yellow belt. And I say the yellow belt, that's like a term for low rise houses in Toronto. Are you seeing like a focus more on like cash flow versus appreciation?
Totally, yeah. Yep. The easy appreciation days are over for now. I think COVID was just a crazy combination of factors, like remote work forced people out of the city, uh, and low
Lots of money in the
rates,
system. Yeah.
cheap money flying around, nothing else to do but like invest in real estate and fix up your home and flip homes, and massive, massive unsustainable population growth that just got out of
Hmm.
control. Like non-permanent residents went parabolic. Um,
Hmm.
just everything kind of broke all at once, and it really benefited real estate in this insane way. And I just think we're going to return back to some normalcy, and investors will once again focus more on cash flow and not be banking on that appreciation as much. Whereas before, you could buy a place, you didn't even care about cash flow. You don't even have to put renters in. Prices were going up so much during COVID.
Hmm.
And so that's just not sustainable. Like, nobody can afford a bunch of negative cash flow properties. And so investors have been forced to rediscipline themselves back to investing for cash flow.
Hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I mean, there's literally like no new supply that's happening, and I think you would agree with me that like other than your grievances, which I see and respect, I think like Ontario, Toronto, GTA are like desirable places to live, right? Just inherently. So I think that like there will be a return of demand and there's not going to be the supply because there is that delay, right? Of projects. It takes like 5 years to actually build from its launch. So in 2027, 2028, what I'm reading, that's when we could see like this insane severe crunch, unfortunately. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think we're headed in the right direction. Affordability is getting better. Rates are coming down in the US and here. And it looks like they're going to have to run things hot. You hear that term a lot right now with inflation, and the governments are just so in debt that they're going to have to, both in the US and Canada is just kind of like a derivative of the US. They're going to have to run things hot. They're going to have to kind of print their way out of this mess that they're in and devalue the dollar. And so that's going to benefit hard assets. And so if you've got a good quality hard asset, if you've got a good rental property, especially like a single family home, ground related housing, and you can hold on to it and it cash flows and it's in a stable position, you might want to hold on to it, and you might want to get yourself some gold and Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't. Do you know Ray Dalio? You heard of Ray Dalio?
Yeah.
So he said that there could be a debt crisis in a couple years in the U.S. And if that
Hmm.
happens, he says that rates are gonna go up. And if that happens, then Canadian rates are gonna follow up. One, do you agree with his assessment? And then two, like what would happen in that situation?
Yeah, I think rates could go up as long as inflation is higher, because they have to have negative real rates to kind of because they have to inflate their way out of all the debt they're in. Like,
Right.
they can either default on the debt, or they can inflate their way out, or they can have extreme austerity. And austerity is not popular, and people are going to cry if we start cutting all these programs and services. And defaulting is never really an option when you can just print your own currency. And so they're just going to have to print a lot of money. And so you want to be
Hmm.
owning real things. But yeah, there is a risk of rates going up. Like, if inflation is going at 10% like it was during COVID, they can raise rates to 5%.
Hmm.
Like, it's still less than inflation. It's still negative real rates. But if you own a bunch of homes and you're highly leveraged, and your rates go from 3% up to 5%, you can get wiped out. So you got to be really careful with how much leverage you take on,
Hmm.
and really have strong cash flow. and put yourself in a strong position to survive kind of any interest rate volatility that we might get.
Yeah, I think that's where Rockstar comes in. Um, all that being said, Anthony, thank you so much for your time. Could you please just let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you and Rockstar?
Sure. So if you wanna learn more about Rockstar, go to our website, rockstarinnercircle.com. You can find our free books, free videos, free resources. You can check out our podcast, and you can sign up for our free real estate investing class. We hold this on like a monthly basis, and we teach you how investors we work with are successfully investing in Ontario real estate, really Southern Ontario real estate. So you can sign up for that free training class. It's 60 minutes long with about 30 minutes of Q&A. And myself, Tom, or Nick teach that class. And aside from that, you can email us at members@rockstarbrokerage.com if you want to chat or have any questions, or give us a phone call. You can find our number on Google pretty easily. And that's it. Yeah, just search up the Rockstar Inner Circle.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thanks, Jacob. I appreciate the time, and thanks for having me on.
Okay, talk soon.